co-founder of DLA Ignite. I'm here with Christine Gritmon, and we're going to be talking about community. And what does that mean? Because I've heard this word bandied about for years, and I think it's become one of those words a bit like influencer, that actually
Yeah.
nobody kind of knows what it means, but actually it's excuse me, it's kind of like a serious thing. Anyway, Christine, tell people where they can get hold of you.
Hi. So I'm pretty easy to find. I'm the only Christine Gritmon in the world. So if you spell my name right, you'll find me. I'm also Gritmon.com. I'm C Gritmon on Twitter and Instagram. And you can also find me in the Social Media Pulse community, which we'll certainly be talking about. So that's at socialmediapulse.community.
Fantastic. So, why don't you just give us a quick brief summary of your journey to how you've got here? And I always and this is so important as well, on the basis that people like you are very privileged to be in a situation, and one of the things that we have enough white, bald, middle-aged men out there. What we need is more Christian Gritmans. So what is it that you can do to tell the people that put a rope down to the people that are coming? Say, what is it that you can be to be Christine Gritmon?
Well, I've been very lucky. I haven't really needed a rope down because I started my career in some very female-dominated companies.
Right.
So that certainly was a big advantage. That was very nice. So it's more people who aren't white who probably need a bit more of the rope down than I do. But I started my career in the beauty industry, which was very cool. Learned a lot about branding and marketing. I was a creative professional for a while, studying graphic design and doing a bit of writing. Then I became a full-time journalist, which was very different from the freelance writing. That's where I first started using social media. And that's where I first discovered personal branding. And that's when I first discovered the power of social media to build community and to nurture community. It wasn't when I was in a huge, massive consumer goods company, which is what you would think, because of the time period that was before social media was a marketing tool. It was just a bit of nonsense that most people weren't even doing yet. So when I first encountered it really in a professional context was when I was a journalist. I discovered a lot about personal branding, which I've certainly run with, but I also really discovered the power of social media to make people feel like they're part of something, to turn what we were doing from sort of a one-way broadcast into a two-way dialogue, and to make sure that everything that we were doing was responsive to what our audience really needed, but more importantly, showed that we were in there with them. And in order to show that, you have to actually be in there with them. I was working for a local paper, and most of us lived in the area that we were covering. So it was really, really important to erase that distinction between, we're the journalists observing, but you guys are in the community, and to realize, no, we have to really lean into the fact that this is our lives too, that we are part of this, and we need to make this a reflection of their lives because we are also part of it, as opposed to it just being kind of a separate thing from on high. So that taught me about social media, taught me about personal branding, taught me especially about community. I then spent 5 or 6 years self-employed in social media. I was a social media strategist, took all sorts of forms, from doing social media from small local businesses to teaching others how to do it better, and eventually to personal brand coaching, which is kind of the string that I'm following now. But in the interim, I was extraordinarily fortunate that the right opportunity came at the exact right time for my own professional journey. I was bumping up against the top of what I could do by myself. And so here I am now. Since January, I've been working for Agora Pulse to help build out their social media pulse community. And as someone who's been part of the general social media community for ages, it was interesting to see the different and unique and important spin that they were deciding to put on it with social media pulse. Because if you're going to bring something new into the field, you have to make sure that there's a reason to add to it. And so I think social media pulse certainly has that. And we can talk about that momentarily, but I've talked enough about my journey.
So I mean, the thing about social media, I really understand your journey, and the fact that looking out over LinkedIn, people still don't understand that they still think it's a broadcast channel.
Yes.
And when they talk about omnichannel is actually means what we're going to do is find as many channels as we can and broadcast over them.
Mm-hmm.
And take
it's going to spray and pray,
and take the content and the brochures that nobody wants to read elsewhere, and hopefully if we put them on social media, somebody will read them, and they still won't. Now the thing is that being a personal brand expert and on the journey that you've been through is the great thing that I like is the fact that you understand that social media is social media. It's not spam media or broadcast media, it's social media, and it's about human beings. It's about being social.
And marketers came in and crashed the party, honestly. For a while, social media was actively not a marketing tool, but of course, in all of human history, we found a way to monetize everything, haven't we? Plus, it makes sense that these companies, they deserve to make money if they're providing something. But, if you're not getting charged, then you are the product. So that's sort of how social media took a turn for the worse for a bit once marketers got in there. And then, of course, there was the Facebook algorithm apocalypse of January 2018, which looms large in every social media manager's mind of that time, where, Zuck tried to right the ship. He said, you know what, people are losing interest because of all the advertising. But if they lose interest, we can't advertise to them. So let's fix this. And so they deprioritized page posts. But here's the thing, they didn't really exactly. I mean, they did. But what they really deprioritized, and this is the message that too many marketers had go over their head. What they really missed is it wasn't you can't post as a business or post as a page and get seen. What it was is you can't just post. You can't post something that's made for passive consumption. You can't just advertise for free at people, because their interest is valuable and you have to keep them engaged. So what I believe the phrase he used was meaningful interaction. He didn't use the phrase engagement. I remember that. Meaningful interactions is what the algorithm was prioritizing. And yes, that mostly meant, personal friends and direct humans. But the fact is, the businesses that actually did take that message and did internalize that message of, oh, we need to put things out that are engaging, that are interactive, that are meant to start a two-way dialogue, they're the ones who didn't have as big a problem. And honestly, it's not just because the algorithms want it, and it's not just because the people who don't want to be sitting there watching ads all day wanted it. It's also because really it's a value to the companies as well, simply because you get to learn so much about the people you purport to serve.
Yeah.
And that's also a mind shift there. It's not, here's the credit card numbers who we want to buy our things. It's not transactional. Nowadays, companies have to get more back to that human side, because companies are ultimately made of humans. We need to get back to that human side. We need to tap that. We need to see it as an asset, not a liability. And we need to kind of look at our online communities, not as an audience, as a community. Big mental shift there. And recognize that this really should be a symbiotic relationship. We should be looking at their needs, which involves listening to their needs, which involves discussing their needs with them, and using that to inform what we're doing, and then using that to inform the way we present what we're doing, so that they recognize that as the solution to their problem or their pain point. And it's really a return to a smarter way of marketing, but it's something that a lot of people have had lost sight of with this whole, pushing stuff on people, and social media looked like this incredible free avenue for that. Now, what you save in money, you really do have to offset that in attention. And I think that that's a good thing, not a bad thing, even if it makes not more work, a different kind of work.
Yeah, it's a different kind of work. Yeah. I think social media is about conversations.
Yes.
And I think people miss that. I mean, I see people writing about employer advocacy, and employer advocacy is really about going to the marketplace and putting brochures out on social media, which people will ignore. But they think that the end point is basically the post, and actually the post is the beginning point, because that's the
Yes.
point where you're going to engage in the conversation, because what I sell and what you sell requires us to have a conversation, sell it. And so where do you think conversations sit in social media today?
I think that they sit at the helm. I think that again, the algorithms, we all demonize the algorithms, but the algorithms really are basically boiling down to a science, human behavior. Hey, Brittany. Hey, Tim. Hey, Jim. It boils down to a science, human behavior. And the algorithms come from what human behavior is doing. You know, we provided this stimulus to them to respond to. How are they responding? And then how can we use that information to encourage putting out more of that and less of the stuff they're not responding to? And it all overwhelmingly shows what people respond to are conversations, especially since we've never had more information flying at our faces at any point in history. We all live in Times Square now.
We
Human
do.
attention, we say human attention is the most valuable commodity nowadays. It's not. It's actually caring. It's taking it a notch further. Attention is one thing. You can pay attention to, you know, scrolling up and down your TikTok feed all day long. Technically, you're giving it your attention. You're doing that instead of doing something else. That's not caring. What you care about is what stops your scroll. Brittany knows that very well. She's gotten very good at making people stop their scroll and saying, you know what, I want to actually see what this person is talking about. This lady on her treadmill, like there's words on the screen. I want to see what those words are and what the hell they have to do with her dancing on a treadmill. And if they do that, they'll be rewarded. But it's really a sense of you can't make people care. So you have to go about it the other way. You have to find out what they care about and then decide if you want to be that and figure out how to be that and genuinely care about being that too, because different people care about different things. If you just say, you know what, we want to be all things to all people, you'd be nothing to anyone. So it's about figuring out who you want to care about you and figuring out what they care about, why they care about it, and why they should care about you. And if you come up empty on that answer in terms of why they should care about you, that's a you problem. And that's not even a presentation problem. That means you have to go back to square one and maybe recalibrate what you're even doing. It's unprecedented levels of market research, to be really crass about it. But you know, it matters because you're doing it with heart. Because if you're not doing it with heart, you know, these systems don't support you anymore. And the people
So
won't support you anymore because there are people who are doing it right.
yeah, so yes, and so I mean, as you go through your scrolling through your social media feed,
Yeah,
as you
I do
say,
that a little bit.
you go boring, 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 boring. Interesting. What's that? Now,
Yes.
doing that is a solo thing. So what is it that makes us come together? And I know you know, if you think about Lenwood, who's just made a comment there, you know,
Hi, Linwood.
he on his posts, there's debates going on.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, this is conversation. This and you know, and so what is it that brings people together to do this? Because this is the stuff. This is me building up for the community question.
Absolutely. Well, there's a very basic human instinct to kind of want to be right on some level. So that's part of why people get into debates on there because they want to be right. But also, I mean, hopefully the good ones also want to learn. They want to learn why they might not be right. But the thing about why do people come together in community for this? Everyone's scrolling and it is a solo act, as you said. The thing about finding a community that we sort of mesh with where there's something in what they're putting out there that resonates with something inside us is it gives us a shortcut to what those things are that we might also find interesting. If you're scrolling aimlessly and you don't have an algorithm informed feed and you haven't strategically followed and engaged with people to inform that algorithm, you're going to see nonsense and it's going to be a lot of a waste of time. Whereas if you have actively identified and started to follow and started to engage with people whose interests are relevant to your interests, that really cuts down a lot of that time. It means that more of that scrolling time is going to feel like time well spent, because we are seeing more and more things that we actually care about. And that's one of the nice things about coming together in community of any sort. As I mentioned, even just training your algorithm sort of plays to that same instinct of wanting to cut to the chase of what is actually interesting to you. And communities really do that too, because if you look at a community, if it identifies itself really well as here's who we're for, you're going to understand that if you go there, you're going to see things that are for you if you're that someone. And hopefully, other people are also going to be serving up their own observations. A community should not be whoever's running the community is talking at you and hopefully
Yes.
presenting you with what you
It
want.
should
That's a
be, you're
page.
talking about like-minded people here.
I'm talking about like-minded people. A successful community ceases almost to belong to whoever's running it. A successful community belongs to itself, and people do start feeling empowered and comfortable to step up and say, hey, I'm going to share my experiences here. And they don't need permission from the powers that be, because a community is theirs as well.
You said to me in the prep for this, which a note that I wrote down, which I thought was, that what happens with communities is people try to control them.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually a community is outside of you or beyond you.
Ideally, it should be. And if it's not, you got to figure out what'll make it catch in that way. You got to figure out what'll make people feel like it's theirs. And this is the first time I've been professionally employed in something specifically identified as community. My boss, Paul Bradley, has been building communities for tech companies for years. So he's kind of new to the social media element. I'm very entrenched in the social media element. I'm kind of new to this. How do you build a community? And Deb Mitchell, my colleague, is really our community manager. She's built a career out of knowing how to do this. She has a membership for people running communities. So it's very meta. They don't mean like Facebook meta. So it's been an interesting puzzle to say, okay, so we're starting it from scratch here. We launched it in March. We are trying so hard to make it really clear that it's not ours, to not have to start all the conversations. When someone posts their own question or their own conversation post, we rejoice, because that is the goal. And that is the hardest part at the beginning.
You also said something, which another thing that I loved as well, which is that community cannot be about ego.
No. Yeah. Because
What do you mean by that?
You cannot view your community as an audience. You cannot view a community as these are my people. Again, a community has to belong to itself. And if you put yourself too front and center in it, it will make other people feel like, oh, that's the person who's supposed to be talking.
It's Christine's community.
Yeah, which in turn means if that's the person who's supposed to be talking, I'm going to speak when spoken to, but I'm not going to put something out there. And then it's not a community, it's an audience. And that's a very, very big difference. And the people who do community wrong and the companies who say, why isn't this community catching? It's because they're not looking at it that way. They're saying, okay, hopefully they're coming at it from the mindset of service still. They're saying, what do the people want? But you really have to have that extra part of what's going to get them to feel like they can speak to, what's going to get them to engage. And that is harder than you would think. It is very difficult. People don't want to speak up. People don't like saying stuff. I love that you have an active comment thread here on this live stream. And that's part of why I made sure to click yes, share to my channels also on Restream, so that doubled our chances. Because as you've seen, I'm sure, and as I've seen in my many years of live streaming, a lot of people just don't comment. And it's like, why am I live then? It's really important.
You're right. I'm just gonna put Brittany's comment up. I haven't read it. I'm just gonna.
She says, "Wow, such a good point that that's not a community; it's an audience. I must continue to remember that when running my membership."
Yeah, it's true. And the thing that we love when I run these, and I run a number of different podcasts, and for us, this is the thing. The trigger or the tipping point that we see with community is where you start seeing in the comments going down the side the people talking to each other.
And that's everything. And especially if they're talking to each other, you just hit on something
Yes.
really important. And again, to go back to the Facebook apocalypse where we all freaked out over the algorithm shifting, we learned that there's different values to different types of engagement, even just on social media. There's, a like, fine. A reaction like a heart or a laughing emoji or whatever, that takes a second more choice, a little more attention, so that's worth a little bit more. Of course, a comment is worth more. A comment that's I heard the magic number was like at least 5 words. It was like the most valuable type of content. But what what the algorithm really loves is when someone who's not the person who wrote the post replies to that and a whole conversation goes on the subthread. The algorithm loves that. And of course, shares are the best currency of all because someone's saying, I love this so much. I want to present it to my people, and they will associate this valuable thing that I just posted with me, even though it didn't originate from me. So that's the most valuable currency. But really having those conversations in there is high value. One thing that I know we try to do with Social Media Pulse is if someone asks a question, even if we could answer it, all 4 of us, including my colleague Ruth Inman, who runs the Pulse Academy, we all know the answers to the questions. We want to be helpful, but it's much better if we can tag in another community member who probably knows the answer better and say, hey, expert here, can you help this person out with this? It's not because we're lazy. It's not because we don't want to. It's not because we don't know the answer. It's because we don't want to dominate the conversation. Because if we just go in and answer it, that shuts it down. There's this sense of these are the people who are running it. And I've made that mistake before. I'm still trying to figure out where that line is there. But we are trying more to call people in to say, you know what? We would love to showcase the expertise of other people because yes, we're in the job because we know what we're talking about, but this isn't the us show. We're actively really trying to highlight other community members to help other community members help each other. And the best thing ever is when relationships develop independently. And now these 2 people who met in our community are going off and working together. I mean, that's really, we want to be the conduit for those valuable relationships. That's what it comes down to. We don't want to be the thing. We want to be the conduit to the thing. And that I feel like is what a good community does. You bring the right people in the right room and let the magic happen.
Yeah, colleague of mine, Eric Doyle, who Andrew Slessor knows, he runs something you won't have seen it.
I've been on Doyle's shows.
Sorry?
Is it Doyle who runs
no,
the show?
Eric, he runs it it's 7 o'clock UK, 8 o'clock UK time.
Sorry,
so
I know a different Doyle whose show.
Yeah. So and he runs something called the Big Live Breakfast Burrito. And that is about creating community, and there's nothing better to find out that 2 of the people in the audience started talking, connecting, and then may have either become friends or did some business together or something like that. It's not about providing a platform which we're going to monetize. It's about creating a platform where the community actually works within itself.
And another thing I'd like to point out, and this connects to my other passion, which is personal branding, is that if you run a community and when you're in the community, you're all sweetness and light and trying to help people come together, and then people write to you personally or encounter you elsewhere and you're standoffish and cold, that says you're faking it. That says you're looking at this community of yours as kind of shooting fish in a barrel, like you've just amassed an audience strategically. You have to be living that accessibility. As I said, Deb Mitchell is the one who is in charge of community for our community. And she's super accessible. She's walking the talk. If you want to talk to her about something, she's down. She is happy to help. She's happy to talk to you. She actually cares. She genuinely cares. And she's always worrying about what is going to get people to engage. We don't want to dominate the conversation. And so you have to actually mean it, because if you don't mean it, you lose that trust. And if you don't have trust in a community, you don't have anything. A community, again, people are scared to step forward in just about anything. Even me, believe it or not. And so trust is really key, making people feel comfortable that they're in an environment where they can come forward. They can ask a question without worrying that they'll sound stupid. They can feel that urge to help somebody without being paid for it. If you're someone where answering that question for your clients, costs them a pretty penny, but you're in this community and someone's asking that same question and you feel that altruistic urge to answer it because that person is a fellow member of your community, that's really what it comes down to. So trust is essential. Trust is my boss Paul Bradley, his LinkedIn little quote there says something about working hard to earn trust and working hard to keep it.
Right.
I'm misquoting it exactly, but trust is very hard to earn. Losing it takes a second.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure your head and your heart and you have to make sure it's all in the right place and you're genuinely there to foster community, not to say, oh, look at all this. I did mention it's good market research, but that can't be the first and foremost way that you look at it. You have to look at it as, how can we help these people to help each other? So that's really what it comes down to. How can we be the conduit to all that magic that needs to happen? Tapping into the right people. Again, put the right people in the right room for the right reasons. Magic will happen. And yeah.
Christine, this has been a masterclass on how to run communities. Thank you so much. And please remind everybody where they can get hold of you.
Absolutely. Well, Gritmon.com kind of has links to it all. It needs a massive overhaul, so don't judge me on my website. But that's where you can find information on my show. Let's Talk About Brand, which is now a podcast with the Adweek Podcast Network. So that comes out every Monday. I have my Chat About Brand Twitter chat on Tuesdays. Oh, hey, that's today. It's in about an hour and a half. I have my Let's Talk About Brand YouTube show on Fridays. You'll find me on all the platforms except TikTok. My TikTok is personal and not very good. And again, the community that I work for, you can find at socialmediapulse.community. And we would love to have you there. Do me a favor, though. If you go there, I'm going to really ask you a big favor. Please post something. It can be a question. It can be, hey, here's who I am and what I'm about, if anyone needs help with anything. It can be, hey, I'm intrigued by this thing. What do you think? Hey, I'm annoyed by this thing. What do you think? If you do social media at all, social media manager, person who does something completely different, but social media has fallen into your lap, whatever it is, we want to hear from you. We want to serve you. We want to help you make those magical connections.
Thank you so much for today, Christine. It's been awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks to all the people commenting today. I had a nice little discussion as well. So thanks, Christine.